I'm Connor Coffin, and I'm here in Santa Barbara, California, where I grew up.
So you grew up in Santa Barbara. Tell us about Santa Barbara. Tell us, why is that place special?
Santa Barbara is special for a ton of reasons. I think mostly just the beauty. It's a really cool beach town located at the base of some mountains here, and we have a gorgeous coastline and a great town. Yeah.
Do you think of Santa Barbara as an environmentally minded city?
I would say in some ways Santa Barbara is definitely environmentally minded. There's a lot of people that are, and then, there's also a lot of wealth in the city that maybe isn't as environmentally minded. So it's a interesting mix of both, but I would say generally, yes.
Cool. Would you say there's like a streak of activism in Santa Barbara?
I do feel like there's a fair streak of activism here, and I think there's a lot of people that are just conscious to, farmers markets and trying to support the local community and keep our beaches and oceans clean. So yeah, I would say so.
I mean, you're one of those people. You are always looking out. You've gone out and like picked up trash on beaches around the world. You're gardening in your backyard, growing ridiculously large beets, as I saw today. So I'd say like you're at least doing that. And is there a community of people around you? It sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I've tried to embrace a lot of those different things and support the environment around here. And I definitely feel like there's a lot of like-minded people here that I connect with. So in that way, it feels like we have a nice community based around that.
And would you say that you were influenced to be that way as a result of growing up in Santa Barbara? Like, do you think that that environmental consciousness came as a result of growing up there?
Yeah, I would say that I do feel like growing up in Santa Barbara has made me more environmentally conscious. But I think on a bigger level than just growing up here, it's probably been a lot about being a surfer and spending so much time in the water and then traveling around the world and seeing, what different communities are like.
Yeah, well, the reason I asked so much about like why or how growing up in Santa Barbara affected you is this episode's about Earth Day, and coming up this month is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And I'm curious, when you think of Earth Day, does anything come to mind for you in
Earth,
particular?
oh gosh, Earth
Or like,
Day.
what are your earliest memories of Earth Day?
Probably some of my earliest memories of Earth Day are actually in Santa Barbara. They do a big party festival kind of thing down in Alameda Park, and I've been to that a bunch of times. So that's kind of an early memory. But when I think of Earth Day, I really just think about, home for me. I think about Santa Barbara a lot because it's such a beautiful place, and just being outside and being in the ocean and seeing green and mountains and hills and just that beauty that the earth is.
One of the things that Lakey brought up that I thought was interesting is she mentioned how growing up in Santa Barbara, the oil rigs are offshore and they're just kind of there and ever present. And to me, that was such a weird thing because I grew up where there wasn't oil rigs offshore. And when I first saw oil rigs offshore, I was kind of taken aback by that. And so you don't
Yeah,
even mention them in your description of Santa Barbara. You just kind of like, yeah, it's the mountains and the ocean, all that stuff. So it
for
almost
sure.
feels like you accept that they're there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, since I've grown up, the oil rigs have just been part of the scenery, and at night they're kind of twinkly and pretty, but obviously, that's changed a lot. And I mean, Santa Barbara as a whole used to be a much bigger oil community. There used to be piers and stuff all along Summerlin Beach and Carpinteria and down by Rincon and stuff. So, I think over the years they've pulled back on a lot of that, which has been good. And our coastline, for the most part, it's really beautiful and pristine. So, yeah, I mean, the old pictures of Carp and Summerlin and stuff with the oil piers up and down the whole coastline are disgusting. So I'm glad that that's not here anymore.
Yeah, I guess what I'm leading at is, Earth Day, some people attribute its start to the oil spill of 1969 off of Santa Barbara's coastline.
Hmm.
And a lot of people say that that was kind of the tipping point for what was a growing environmental movement in the country. You had a lot of people speaking out about the environment for a number of years, and then this spill happened, and it kind of overnight spawned a number of different organizations in Santa Barbara, from Get Oil Out to the Community Environmental Council, the Environmental Defense Center. Later, Santa Barbara Channelkeeper was a project of that organization. So it kind of spawned a lot of groups locally and then nationwide as well, and really created this much larger movement. And I just think it's so fascinating that Earth Day is this global phenomenon that includes millions, if not a billion people, or however many participate. And yet a lot of it all goes back to this one incident in Santa Barbara
Hmm.
in your backyard.
I mean, that's so cool. I don't even know some of those things. So yeah, it's awesome. And it's really cool. Like you're saying, I mean, do you feel like Santa Barbara is environmentally centered in those ways? Absolutely. Like learning more about that. I mean, a lot of those things happened before I was alive. So I guess I'm the lucky benefactor of a lot of the work that's been done by people before me in this community. And I get to reap the benefits of that. So I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, I think, it's really cool. That's stemmed from here. And I mean, I think in general, this is just such a beautiful little community that it makes sense that a bad event here would have stemmed, a lot of action across the world.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and I think one of your superpowers, Connor, is that you're often really grateful, and you're able to step back and like have that wider perspective of, wow, I'm a product, or I'm a part of this community that of all these people who came before me. And as I spoke to some of the different groups for this conversation, this podcast, it was incredible to see how much work they've done that I think so many of us don't even get to see, because the reality is that like an oil spill is a very visible form of pollution,
Hmm.
and it's a horrible incident, but so many things could be so much worse. But because they're not, we're like, oh, we're losing the war, so to speak, right? I think if you zoom out the big picture, climate change is really real, plastic pollution is really bad. There's a lot of stuff that could bring you down the environmental movement. But as I spoke to these groups in your hometown who are like, well, we were able to get X, Y, and Z bills passed, and we're able to prevent X number of offshore drilling permits. And I went, oh my goodness, like all this work that goes unseen kind of
Yeah,
just keeps things the status quo. It's pretty incredible. But I feel like what you're saying is that you respect and appreciate that that's going on in and around you.
for
That
sure. And
wasn't even
it's,
a question. That was just a long-winded ramble, but I don't know.
yeah, no, well, I mean, it's really cool. Even just, being someone who's young is to learn about those things and about that work that people have done. Because like you said, a lot of it's under the surface and stuff that I may or may not even know or hear about. So yeah, it just makes me all the more appreciative for the place that I live and the people that have, preserved it.
Yeah, I mean, you're very fortunate. In a normal year, you're traveling around the world. This year is a little different with
Yeah.
COVID-19, of course, but in your normal year, you're all over the map. You're traveling on the championship tour and taking other trips and stuff like that. So you see a lot of the world, and I think it's kind of cool. You actually, I don't know, maybe you have this little extra badge of honor now of of the Earth Day and environmental movement that you can take with you.
Yeah, and I think it also makes you realize, it's easy to get stuck in those places, where you live and be like, oh, this could be better, this could be better. And then when you have that perspective of traveling the world and seeing what some other places are like, it really makes you appreciate where you're from. I mean, when you're from somewhere like Santa Barbara, so super fortunate in that way. And I also think it's cool to see the way people take initiative in other parts of the world too that do have big problems, and they're not overwhelmed by those bigger problems, and they might not even have the resources that we might have here to help take care of them, but they're all for it, and they're working hard to try to make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's one of the incredible things. I think often we get into this conversation and it's about individual actions versus big systemic change, and the reality is we need both. The
Yeah,
individual cleaning up their beach is not going to stop ocean plastic pollution, and it's not going to save the ocean. But when lots of people do that and get engaged in the fight and then go collectively vote together, it becomes really powerful.
for sure. And it's so cool to see those, maybe smaller individual it's cool to see the smaller individual movements pay off and create a bigger systemic reaction to something. And like even, just the beach cleanups, now you see people doing them all over the world, and people really making a dent in some of the plastic, and that hopefully swims upstream and starts to tackle the problem at a deeper level. And I will say it's been pretty crazy with the COVID-19, and maybe it's something, a positive that'll come out of it, is the way that a whole world, our whole global economy, all the countries have really banded together and are like, okay, we got to stop this. And I mean, some more than others, but when something's a really a serious problem that gets put in front of people, it's like action is actually taken. And it's just interesting to see, because sometimes I know, I'm sure you feel, and other people feel that you're beating your head against a wall trying to, bring something to people's attention. And, this one's kind of slapped everyone in the face and hasn't given us a choice. So it's crazy to see the difference that actually we can make when we get behind something.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the bipartisan action that we saw really quickly and the international sort of work, even though some people may say certain countries did better or worse, I think at the end of the day, everyone responded relatively quickly. At least if you look at this versus say the climate crisis, where many
Yeah.
countries have just stalled and stalled and stalled and stalled, and there are many who are engaged in the climate crisis who are saying, hang on, we've been ringing the fire alarm for years and you've been
Yeah.
ignoring us. They might say the same thing, but it does show that if we can get that political alignment, that we can get agreements done, and that the money is there, right? We passed an aid package here in the US really quickly, which is unheard of. But we often say when we talk about climate, well, how are we going to pay for this transition and all that? Well, the money's there if we all really care about it.
For sure. If I could vote for where my taxpayer dollars would go, they would definitely go towards climate change, at least in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, you've been really good about being outspoken about some of this stuff on your own personal platform, and you're lucky to have that platform. And I think it's really cool that you do that. What's that experience like for you as someone who's being vocal about these topics?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, surfing has given me this platform and has given me an amazing life, and I want to try to help use my platform to do some good as along the way, and hopefully leave the world a little bit better place than it was when I found it, even if it's just like minuscule, and at least try to have a ripple effect onto the people around me and the people that follow me to encourage them to do the same. So yeah, just like we're talking about, small things hopefully can lead to a little bit bigger change along the way.
Awesome. Now, given that we're all under quarantine right now, and Earth Day is usually an event where everyone gets together, that's not going to happen this year. I know that in Santa Barbara they pushed the event back to July, and hopefully by then we can all get out and get together and give everyone a hug and
Yeah.
go back to enjoying each other. But given that Earth Day has been pushed back, and that we're in quarantine, how do you think about online activism now? And how do you think about using our platforms? And do you have any plans for Earth Day or other things coming up this year to engage digitally?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about any specific plans related to Earth Day yet. But I will say with the quarantine, it's been a really nice time to just, there's so much time in the day. We're not running around and I'm not traveling. So I can really take the time to think about some of these things and some of these messages and stories that I want to help tell. So it's been a nice time. And I feel like oddly, I mean, not oddly, people are really on their phones a lot. I mean, we're looking for stuff to do. So things that I think easily get passed up in day-to-day social media, people seem to be taking more time to read into. And like I've known even just with my silly gardening posts and stuff, people are actually way more engaged in that sort of content than normally when life's hustling and bustling. So that's kind of cool. I think it's a nice time for people to be able to kind of slow down and look at some of these bigger pictures. And for us, like on the environmental side, it seems like people have a little bit more of an attention span for that. And I think with these big problems, it's like people want to see positive change come out of that. And it's a good opportunity for some good things to come out of this.
I think it's very well said. And I
Mhm.
feel the same. I'm hoping that, we can still not lose any momentum that the environmental movement has, and that we can hopefully maybe even pick up some steam while everyone's at home and thinking about their impacts, and maybe forced to deal with their day to day a little bit more viscerally, right? Instead of
Yeah,
just kind of being in that rat race.
for sure. It's been really interesting to see some of the photos from around the world of before and during COVID-19, with the less traffic and less, factories and everything turning and burning. It's like things clean up really quick. And I think, it's been cool to see here, I'm not doing a whole lot, but trying to live minimally and eat from the garden, eat from the freezer, the fish and stuff I've caught. And, I'm trying not to go to the grocery store at all. And if and when I do, I'm trying to be specific about what I buy and what I'm consuming, and obviously trying to cut back on spending. So yeah, it's been kind of cool to see the way you can change your life and scale it back and try to ride out a storm like this.
Yeah, well, I'm hopeful that, everyone thinks about it the way you do and takes that positive approach to it. And yeah, thanks, Connor. I really appreciate it. This is a really great chat.
Yeah, Reese, no worries. Thanks for having me. And quarantine safely and safely and sanely.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.